welcome to our English news edition. These are the headlines. Horrifying images from Gaza Strip as the Zionist aggressions are still going. No less than 400 martyrs and 1,000 wounded Palestinians are reported. National Diplomacy Day, a day to recall the dynamic, proactive Algerian policy and the affirmation of Algeria's constant principles of supporting and defending just causes. Al-Jaish editorial focuses on the outstanding Algerian diplomacy victories, entitled For a Multipolar World. No less than 340,000 trainees are taking part in the new session of professional and educational training, and for that new specialties are created. Those were today's headlines. First of all, we have new developments concerning the situation in Palestine, where more than 400 were martyred and 2,200 are wounded, according to the provisional toll of the Zionist aggression on the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Health Ministry declared an emergency state at the level of all hospitals, and a general strike has included all sectors in the occupied West Bank. Further details with Manan Ava.
More than 400 Palestinian martyrs and 2,000 wounded. This is the provisional toll of the Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip. On the Zionist side, more than 600 dead and around 100 hostages are held in Gaza, its biggest loss since the October 1973 war. The Zionist occupation army declared a state of war after the Palestinian resistance launched an operation from the Gaza Strip on Saturday called Deluge of Al-Aqsa. The Palestinian resistance operation is a response to the crimes of the Zionist occupation, its exactions against the Palestinian people, and its repeated assaults on the Al-Aqsa Mosque with complete impunity. For the second day running, the Zionist army is pursuing a repressive strategy against the Palestinians, targeting the population, the Gaza hospital, civilian buildings, cutting off electricity supplies and closing access points. It has imposed a complete closure of the West Bank and closed the Karama crossing, linking the occupied territory with Jordan. 2 murderous attacks took place in Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip and in Beit Lahm. Several people were killed, including children, women and elderly people. A situation condemned by the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who ordered the protection of the Palestinian people and asserted their right to defend themselves against the occupying army. Prime Minister Mohammed Shatiya warned against any international alignment with the Zionist entity, stressing that such an attitude is synonymous with condoning Zionist crimes against the Palestinian people, according to his statement. Palestinians are only defending themselves, and they are now united within Gaza or in the West Bank and throughout the world. Shatiya also called for an urgent emergency meeting of the Arab League at a ministerial level. This escalation of violence by the Zionist occupation is unacceptable, denounced the Secretary General of the Arab League, Ahmed Abul Ghait, who said that the international community is entirely responsible for its inaction in the face of the aggressive policy of the Zionist entity in the occupied Palestine, calling for an end to the Zionist occupiers' aggression in Gaza. A general strike has affected all aspects of life in the occupied West Bank to denounce the Zionist army's attacks on the Gaza Strip and the complicit silence of the international community. While these barbaric acts have been roundly condemned, the occupier continues its crimes against humanity in Gaza, as the position of Western media and politicians illustrates the double standards they apply when it comes to the Palestinian people and their right to defend themselves against the oppressor. Selective Western condemnation and variable media treatment puts the occupier and the occupied on an equal footing, denying the Palestinian people their right to resist those who despoil their land, a legitimate right recognized by the international community. A situation that speaks volumes about the hypocrisy of the Western powers at a time when the Security Council is holding private consultations on the escalation in the occupied territories, taking into account that all resolutions taken to date have remained unheeded.
Since the beginning of the attacks, Algeria expresses its support to Palestine while highlighting the necessity to protect Palestinians, a historic position from the noble Algerian diplomacy that celebrated its National Day on October 8th. Yassine Hamdi with the details.
Born during the National Liberation War, the Algerian diplomacy has gained notoriety through its major actions for the resolution of conflicts. We celebrated its National Day on October 8th. Algeria, faithful to its principles, has always supported the different liberation movements across the world and has always worked to resolve international crises and to defend the right of the colonized people for self-determination. Diplomacy has always been the instrument that allowed Algeria to show up on the international scene and make its voice heard. This is how the Algerian actions for the crisis settlement were repeatedly hailed by the international community. The history of the Algerian diplomacy is very noble in terms of mediation and peaceful conflicts resolution, as Algeria handled the liberation of the American hostages in 1981, the peace agreement between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and also the resolution of the Libyan crisis, in addition to its unconditional support to the Sahrawi and Palestinian causes. Algeria used all its diplomatic power to try to find a solution to the crisis in Niger by favoring the diplomatic and political ways instead of foreign interference. Diplomacy allowed Algeria to be unique at the international level, faithful to its principles by always supporting the right causes against colonialism, and allowed the oppressed people to recover their sovereignty.
On the occasion of National Diplomacy Day, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad presided over a ceremony in the presence of the advisor to the President of the Republic, executives from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and members of the diplomatic body accredited to Algeria. In a speech, Ahmed Attaf recalled Algeria's diplomatic efforts to establish peace and security at regional and international level, based on unchangeable principles of its diplomacy. Let's have a listen.
Algeria owes a debt of gratitude to the President of the Republic for all he has achieved. We are grateful to him because he has completely revolutionized Algerian diplomacy, making it stronger and more firmly rooted in the principles and values of the November Revolution and fully reflected in the diplomacy of the independent and sovereign Algerian state.
In its latest editorial, Al Jaish magazine looked back on the 61 years of the Algerian membership in the United Nations, a date established as National Diplomacy Day, in recognition of the efforts made for our glorious revolution and the honorable position it adopted at the regional and international level. More details with Rania Al-Bahri.
Entitled For a World Order, Algeria's role has been highlighted for more than 60 years. Algeria has been distinguished on the international scene by its firm and principled positions aimed at establishing peace and security in a multipolar world, based on cooperation and non-interference in the foreign and internal affairs of countries and the right of peoples to self-determination, as well as refusing to use force or threats to resolve international crises and conflicts. This approach has allowed our country to achieve major victories, most notably those achieved by the new Algeria, by being elected a few months ago by an overwhelming majority by the United Nations General Assembly as a non-permanent member of the diplomatic process. In a global speech carrying strong messages delivered during the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, called for the establishment of a new world order that guarantees equality and cooperation among nations. In this regard, the President of the Republic announced the conflicts and crises that the world is witnessing, which have reached an unprecedented level, where millions of people were displaced and international relations turned from relations of consensual cooperation to confrontation. adding that this confrontation and this geopolitical conflict in its multiplicity, in light of the crisis, the Security Council found itself in recent years weak in its central role, in which the United Nations was founded by entrusting him with the responsibility of maintaining international peace and security, and by rejecting in particular the United Nations Charter, the use of force and the elimination of causes that threaten peace, as well as the peaceful settlement of disputes. The editorial stated that Algeria also called through the voice of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, for the strengthening of international multilateral action in the face of various challenges and threats, and that it is committed to exert its utmost efforts within the framework of the Security Council to encourage the adoption of a comprehensive and participatory approach. And from this standpoint, the Army General, Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Said Shengriha, affirmed that the ANP is in line with the commitment of the Supreme Commander of the National People's Army to continue the process of acquiring the elements of strength to defend national sovereignty by saluting the achievements of our diplomacy, by declaring that the brave men of Algeria face enormous challenges as they already did in the past, by showing the same determination to preserve the independence and the sovereign decisions, following the voice of their ancestors with firm principles and noble values, inspired by the richness of their historical heritage, such as the continued commitment to bring peace to the world, non-interference in the foreign and internal affairs of others, advocating for just causes and oppressed peoples, and defending their right to self-determination. Finally, the editorial stated that Algeria will always remain loyal to its firm principles in its struggle for peaceful world security, as well as consecrating the right of peoples to freedom, independence and sovereignty over their lands.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, received the Under-Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs of Chile, Gloria de la Fuente. The two parties evoked ways and means of developing bilateral relations between the two countries. The Under-Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs of Chile, Gloria de la Fuente, was also received by the Trade Minister, Taib Zitouni. The two parties discussed prospects of developing trade volume between the two countries. In other news, a new session for vocational training and education kicked off on Sunday. Speaking from the Center of Technical and Scientific Research on Dry Zones of Biskra Province, the Minister of this sector announced the introduction of technical English and vocational training programs. Yassine Merabi presided the official ceremony for the start of the new academic year by video conference, in which he explained the objectives and goals of the approach that aims to level up trainees' skills and prepare them to cover the needs of foreign companies investing in the country. Merabi also affirmed that everything is put in place to ensure a successful session. The professional training is trying to adapt to the needs of the job market, and for that new specialties are created and brand new establishments are opened. Yassine Hamdi with the details.
More than 340,000 young interns joined the 1,225 establishments of professional training across the country for the session 2023-2024. All the human and material resources were mobilized for the beginning of this academic year, marked by the launching of 13 important learning and training centers in the different regions of the country. This year, there are 495 specialties in 23 professional sectors covering the main areas of activity. With these training offers, Algeria insists on priority professional sectors such as industry, digitalization, construction and public works in order to adapt the trainings to the needs of the job market. And to do so, several partnership agreements were signed with different companies. For the session 2023-2024, the Ministry of Professional Training added new specialties that are important to the national economy, such as water desalination, train mechanics, and the electrification and maintenance of the railway network. And for the training of people with specific needs, the ministry created a special program for them with more than 500 new pedagogic places in the specialized centers in the provinces of Laghouat, Algiers, Skikda, Boumerdès and Ghelizan. 2 new centers were opened in the south of the country.
Abroad, several speakers at the UN's Fourth Decolonization Committee in New York agreed on the importance of urgent and unconditional implementation of all UN's resolutions in order to achieve a peaceful and lasting settlement for Western Sahara's issue. In this context, delegations from all over the world renewed their support for the just Sahrawi cause. Alright, that was it for today's news edition. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.